everybody. So today we're going to talk a little bit about trimming our cylinders. And if we think back to how we made these, we should have measured a 1/4 inch for our floor and did the best we can in terms of making a nice even wall. And then lastly, before we remove these off of the wheel, we have to make sure that the rim is parallel to the wheel head. So we chop that off with our needle tool and just neaten it up so that it is nice and clean, and that'll make sense in just a second. And we got to try to remember to remove some of this extra clay down at the bottom before we actually take the cylinders off the wheel. But in general, there's a couple things that we want to look at in terms of so that we understand the actual thickness of the floor, and there's a way that we can measure for that, and then gauge how much extra clay we have here. So I'm going to take a straight edge, and I just have this wooden dowel that I stick straight down to the floor, and I'm going to make a mark here and then go to the outside and make another mark. And you can see I have a 1/4 inch floor. I made sure to measure my floor so I know it's at least even. So that takes a lot of guesswork out of this. And also I removed that bottom portion of clay that you can see here. I didn't do it on this demo piece, but I removed some of this clay so it's not so thick here, but you can see how the wall thickness changes as it gets towards the bottom, and that's perfectly normal when we're learning how to do this. But another key thing is to really understand the inside shape. So I tried my best to have a corner down here and then a nice straight wall. So with that in mind, I know that I could, when trimming, if this is my tendency when I'm at the wheel, that I have this bottom 1.5 inches or so, that's going to be a little bit thicker, and it gradually gets thicker as it gets to the base. And if I know that's how I throw, I can also look down into the wall of this and just get a sense of how thick the bottom of here is. If you can look down and you see it getting wider out to the bottom, then you know you have some trimming to do. And if we're just learning how to make cylinders, I can imagine that we all have a little extra clay that needs to be removed from the bottom. So knowing that, I have trimmed this one before I took it off the wheel, so I know that this is level. If it's not level, when you go to flip this over and try to center it, it's gonna wobble on you. And just to be kind to ourselves, right now we're doing level rims. In the future, when you get more comfortable with trimming, we can talk about trimming uneven rims. So I'm gonna use all these rings on the wheel to do my best to eyeball and center this piece as close as I can to the middle. And you'll see why in a second. So as I spin this, you can see there's a little bit of wobble. So to get this even closer to the middle, I'm gonna use my needle tool, and I'm just gonna brace right in front of me, and then really lightly move towards the piece. And you can see I have a line that scratches from there to here. And what we'll do is we'll put those 2 marks in front of me, and I'm gonna try to find the middle of them, and then just give it a light push away, and then remove the mark. And then we'll do this process until we get our cylinder in the middle. So I'm gonna go again. And what should happen is your mark should get longer and longer. So the longer the mark, the closer you are to the middle. So I'm gonna do marks up top so that I could see. So pretty far all the way around. It's almost 2/3 of the piece. So I'm gonna go towards the middle and give it a small nudge. The closer you get to the middle, the smaller your nudges towards the center become. Okay, so here we go. All right, so this one's touching now. And I'm not being distracted by what's happening down here. I'm focused on the area that I'm trimming in. So now I could take some clay to secure this piece to the wheel head. And you just need, I would recommend at least 3. You can go up to 4, but at least 3 pieces of clay that are about the thickness of your thumb. And with some light pressure, just pushing down on the cylinder, you're gonna wrap these pieces gently and then push the clay down into the wheel head. That secures the clay to the wheel, and now I'm gonna gently snug that coil to the cylinder, and that's gonna really grab onto the cylinder now. So I'm gonna try to split this up evenly into thirds. So down into the wheel head, secure around the rim. Again, down into the wheel head, and secure it to the wheel. Okay, so we have 2 trimming tools in our kits. We have this large loop tool from Kemper, and then we have the small square edge and the small round edge. So this tool, that also comes from Kemper. These are our 2 main trimming tools for us here at this college. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna use all these little nooks and crannies to our advantage, really. So this small circle, it can be used for removing a lot of material with less drag because it's a small, tight circle, and you can cut and it'll remove clay really easily. Same thing with the corners of this small square side. And then the square sides are really good for removing tool marks. So round edges are gonna leave a groove similar to throwing lines, and then the flat edges can remove all those grooves. And then you can use these as decoration too. So if you really enjoy the trimming process, you can leave a lot of these marks behind. It's up to you. Same thing with this larger loop tool. The small edge is going to offer less drag, so you can cut and remove clay relatively easily. Same thing with this other round edge, and then the flat side is really good for removing all those marks and having a nice, clean, smooth surface. So that's just the basics. We'll get into more advanced trimming later, but for now, I'm gonna get this spinning, and our trimming speed is gonna be somewhere in the neighborhood of centering speed. You want it to be fast enough so that your tool isn't just following every little bump, but it's gonna spin fast enough so that you're cutting through those rather than following any lumps. So here we go. It's gonna spin. My left hand is just gonna support the base here, and when you hold your trimming tools, you wanna hold them really close to the cutting edge. Otherwise, it's gonna chatter on you. And we can do that on purpose later, but for now, really firm. Start here at the top. You can see what I mean. I'm staying in place. My hands are supported. It's really similar to lifting up the walls. It's that same. 2 hands are always connected. And I'm just removing a little bit of clay. And remember, I only really need to trim, for me personally, this bottom inch or so. And I only need to remove very little clay. There's not a whole lot of clay for me to remove. But some of you might need to spend a little extra time trimming, and that's perfectly fine. But the main goal, we're just trying to remove excess clay, tidy up the shape. You can see how all these tools work. And then experiment with the marks that they leave behind. That's up to you. What I'm gonna do though, is we don't wanna forget to bevel this corner edge here, just so that we don't have any issues with chipping later on. And if the bottom, if you have, for instance, some really rough spots from some of the older bats that we have in the studio, sometimes you get a lot of wood on there, you could trim and clean that up a little bit. Or if you have really aggressive wire tool marks, you can remove those. But this flat edge tool, this long flat edge, is really good for making a nice flat bottom. And I don't need to remove a whole lot of clay from the bottom, if you remember. I'm just neatening it up, tidying it up, make sure I have my beveled edge here, and then I'm essentially done. So Don't forget to sign your work. And then gently remove these pieces of clay. And last thing you want to do is just feel your objects. So if these are cylinders, they could be used as cups. You can give that drinking motion and just feel if it feels really heavy, then you probably need to put it back down and trim again. And don't be afraid of, doing that a couple times. It's okay to take it off, feel it, and put it back down. That's actually a good lesson to try to start from the very beginning. But I have a beveled edge, flat bottom, flat sides. That's finishing up our cylinders. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck with trimming.